bodega, alpha and omega. Siamese sailors sell celery sandwiches. Sawing-a-bada, serving platter.
Hey, Jamie?
Yes?
Did you want to try reading that line on the script there?
Oh, yeah, let's see. You could save big when you bundle your home and auto with Progressive, that one?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I'm just not warmed up yet. Shouldn't be long. Detector test.
Bundle your home and auto with Progressive today.
The marmot mangled my mushy pork pancake.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.
Pros bring something extra to every job. Now at the Home Depot, they also get something extra. Pro Extra, our free loyalty program built for pros just like you. Members earn perks with every dollar spent, like Pro Extra Dollars, a tool rental credit, and more. New members get $20 off their next in-store purchase of $200 or more just for signing up. Learn more at homedepot.com/Pro Extra. New year, more rewards, Pro Extra, only at the Home Depot. How doers get more done.
Thank you for visiting ChristopherMedia.net. Christopher Media. Let's make some noise. From Asthma Core Studios near Detroit, Michigan. It's Unregimented.
Gangsters, what's up, guys?
And now, here are your hosts.
Here we are, show number 175. I'm Chris.
I'm Aaron.
And I'm Rich. And we have a guest today.
I'm Monique.
Monique, introduce yourself.
I'm Monique. Hi.
Hi, Monique.
Hello.
Welcome to Unregimented.
Thank you.
Monique's family's kind of like the only family that's not blood that I have up here. Well, not the only, but kind of like extended family. So
okay,
yeah, that's how we know each other.
I think you're here on a dare, though.
A little bit, yeah.
Or a challenge. I challenged Rich on, was it last episode that we had this conversation?
It was.
Only a week ago?
Yeah.
Boy, this time is flying.
Well, it's been quite the week.
Rich, can you set up this? If somebody didn't hear last episode.
We were talking, and it seems like as much as we goof on people in the echo chamber, we're in the echo chamber kind of ourselves, because we're all the same age, kind of pretty much have a lot of the same ideas and everything. And I brought up, I hear younger people saying this, and Aaron's like, well, I don't really hear it. And I was like, well, I can, maybe bring one or two people on if you want. And he said, yeah, let's do it. Fast forward a week, and here we are. So,
yeah, for frame of reference, we all probably got a good 20 on Monique as far as age.
Easily.
Yeah.
Easily.
She's firmly out of the Generation X category.
Yes.
So let's just leave it at that.
Sure.
I feel bad. I feel like, oh, hey, we got a real live young person, everybody. Like, it's...
I know, like, Monique, you're a zoo exhibit.
Great.
We've got a special guest on our show, a millennial.
A young person. Well, actually, first question.
One of those rare
What
things
is the
that we
first
found
question?
in the wilderness.
Well, you're 17. You're the daughter of a friend of Rich's. Are you a millennial? Or are you in the age group that, do you guys call yourself millennials? I've heard post-millennial.
I think so, yeah. To be honest, I don't actually know where that age is supposed to end, but
I think
everybody that I know
up,
refers to themselves as a millennial, so.
Once you look it up, there's so many different interpretations now.
There is.
Like I said, I've heard post-millennial thrown out for people born after 2000. Like, all right.
Right.
Oh, so real live millennial. Oh.
So the conversation that we were having last week, though, was about, Rich, you had brought this up a couple times. And I think this was in response to me saying about a lot of subjects that we were talking about Rachel Dolezal especially. I pretty much had the attitude of, I don't really care what you do or what you want to call yourself. It really doesn't matter to me. What you do is your own business. And Rich wasn't disagreeing with me, but he was saying that he gets called out for that type of attitude. That it's, well, I don't know. How would you phrase this, Rich? That like being on the sidelines is as good as being on the other side?
I would say that from younger people, exchanges online, in person, I tend to hear more of, whereas we would say, whatever, 5-10 years ago, I don't care if gay people get married. Right. I will hear things like, it doesn't matter. It's not good enough to just not care. there's a difference between not caring and supporting them.
Yeah, it seems like live and let live is no longer enough.
And
right,
that's
like,
where Monique comes in, because I don't want to put words in your mouth, Monique. So, I mean, I know we had this conversation a few times in the past. And so you were the person that popped into my head first and foremost that, like, is not just an online entity. Like, you know, that.
So you guys use the phrase not good enough. I don't agree with that. Like, it's not good enough. But there are people out there who are, like, claiming to be, like, supportive of the LGBT community. Like, I came out to my parents as pansexual. Do you guys know what that means?
I do.
Kind of.
Like, honest question, because a lot of people don't, which is okay.
I'll be that guy. In our day, it just didn't mean bisexual. Doesn't it mean girls and guys?
So they're similar. So pansexual means people of all genders. So obviously there are people who identify outside of male and female, and that's another tangent I'm not even going to go on right now. But just people regardless of their gender. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm dating a boy right now, but if he was the same exact person but he were a girl, I would still be dating him, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I came out to my parents like that, and my dad was just like, you know, like, obviously he's, like, supportive and he loves me and everything, but he was just like, yeah, I don't really care. And hearing that is a lot different than hearing, wow, that's great and I support you. You know what I mean? Like, they're different. And when you're trying to claim to be, like, an ally to people like that, and you're just saying, I don't care, that's not helping to, like, push towards everybody being supportive of it, if that makes sense.
Well, I guess we came up in the age group where if you did that, you were just hoping for I don't care. Like, I don't care was one of the best case scenarios in our, if like in the 20 years ago.
In the 90s, when we started to see some change in the view of anybody who was other than heterosexual, it was the people that I heard supporting other people's choices had that attitude of what do you want to do in the privacy of your own home? None of my business. You know, I think that's completely. I mean, I feel like that's what we were talking about last week. When you're talking about a loved one with that attitude, I think you want a little bit more level, certainly, of caring. I mean, when it comes to my kids, if they want to tell me that you know, they're attracted to whoever, it's not going to certainly change the way I act towards them or feel about them. I don't necessarily want to know what they do in the privacy of their own homes, hopefully. I mean, I can see the separation there where you're like, oh, that's my kid. I don't want to think about it.
Well, I don't need to play-by-play of my child's sex life.
Hey, to be fair, they don't want to think about you either.
Well, right.
They know how they got here. They don't want to think about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My parents are dead, I still don't want to think about it.
Me and my sister, that's it.
Yeah, it's just by magic. The stork came. That's as far as I'm concerned. Behold, a virgin shall conceive. I just don't want to think about it. I learned about that. I was like,
oh, mom and dad. Oh, no. Yeah, trust me.
Well, I guess I can see how saying it so bluntly as I don't care does really come off as very dismissive.
Well, especially like when you're talking to your parent, and again, like, I'm not trying to like talk about my dad in a bad way or anything, but like, I feel like for some people it takes like a level of bravery to come out like that, and to like figuring out your sexuality is such a weird thing. I don't even know how to describe it. Like, if you're not straight, like, obviously when you grow up and you're a straight person, like,
it's everything in the media is clean cut with straight people either. Everybody goes through a weird phase of some sort. But you grow up and you're seeing like straight people on TV and straight couples all the time, and then when you're like a little gay kid, you just kind of like, does that even exist? Like, my best friend is a lesbian, and she literally thought she was like the first gay person until she was like 10 years old. Right. So it seems like a continuation of the old ways of trying to just sweep it under the rug and not admit what's actually there.
Well, let me ask this question, because to me that is such a foreign concept, because the last 20 years, and everything from sitcoms to movies, music, people coming out and having gay characters, having gay main characters, it's just the norm to me. I mean, if you watch a movie like Snatch, Tom Hardy plays a gay gangster in that movie. You know, if you watch the latest Star Wars movie, Rogue One, You know, they never. It's Star Wars. I mean, but you know.
Also,
it was heavily implied that was a gay couple.
He played both Cray brothers, so we're gay gangsters.
Although I'll tell you
coincidence.
One thing that
is, you know what I'm saying? Or what is that? Will and Grace, or Ellen. To me, it's just like, I guess if I was a kid and I'm not watching those shows for the last 20 years, and I'm not seeing it. Versus when we were kids,
right? But
you hardly ever saw it. Then I would assume that it's not represented in the media.
Well, I've been told a good tool for perspective on this or anything like women's rights. The wife, you guys, I told you where she comes from politically, and it's kind of helped.
Your wife,
yes,
not the metaphorical wife.
No, my wife,
someone's wife. Yeah,
she said yes, it's great, it's good, it's happening now. But she's like, if you want to know the levity of the situation, she's like, you have to look up the timeline. She's like, that's what will help to kind of put it in perspective for you with things like that,
Well, because I remember I was a teen during the 90s.
Put women's rights on a timeline, put gay rights on a timeline, and that's where the levity of the situation kind of comes into you. Like, oh, it's like this now, but it's only been like this for this short amount of period of time.
Right. In the 80s, it wasn't that there weren't any gay people on TV. It wasn't necessarily talked about, and they weren't identified as gay or being anything other than heterosexual. It was all implied with a little limp wrist and some flowery language, and they were used for comedic value. It was, they were either a lech or just there for a laugh, to be dismissed.
The 90s is a good dichotomy of it, because
it was pretty quick in the 90s when we started seeing people other than heterosexuals move into main roles.
Yeah, because beginning of 90s, you come out as gay, still potentially hurts your career. By the end of the 90s, nope.
Yes.
And on top of that, okay, let's be honest here. What's the easiest way to humanize people and to get people to humanize a group of people to people who might be resistant to doing so? And the easiest way to disarm those people, and that's through laughter. That's through comedy. That's how a lot of barriers get broken.
Well,
all right. So at the same time as you say the limp-wristed stuff was like, oh, yeah, it was just to be laughed at. Actually, that's one way of looking at it.
There's a difference in the material,
of seeing that.
No, there's a big difference in the way you handle that material.
So without Jack Tripper, you don't get Jack, whatever the fuck his name was, on Will and Grace. You got to do Jack Tripper for Three's Company.
He wasn't gay.
No, but the premise of the show was
that
that's the only way that the landlord would let him live.
Oh, he had to pretend, right? It was like a bosom buddies thing.
Yeah,
that's right. He had to pretend like he would.
Yeah, they wanted no cohabitation of unmarried people in the place he lived.
I forgot about that spin on it.
Well, then, I mean, now you do that. That's never making it on network TV. That's pejorative. That you'll have 900 special interest groups protesting against it. But then, I mean, it's laying the groundwork.
That was done for a laugh. Right?
Yeah.
The punchline of Will and Grace wasn't, and he's gay. So there's a difference in. No, it wasn't at all. No, absolutely. Well, Will and Grace showed you that there could be more than one type of gay person.
Yeah, two types of gay stereotypes.
Well, sure, yeah, but it did help broaden it.
That's true.
I mean, you have people that are, kind of maybe exaggerated, you might say, in their actions and are very open about it. And not that Will wasn't open about it. He just didn't act like a stereotypical quote-unquote gay.
That's true. If you tell someone in 1990, hey, in 10 years there's going to be a #1 network show that has 2 gay people prominently featured, you'd be like, get the fuck out of here.
But where do
we live?
We're kind of straying from the topic at hand, though, that we wanted to tackle.
This your first day?
And
well, real quick, I just want to comment on the don't care thing as a
No,
parent.
that's what I want to get back to.
Okay, as a parent, as anybody who's my age who went through the teenage years, Monique, I understand exactly where you're coming from when you say something and your parents go, "Oh, I don't care." Okay, are you happy? Or something, or whatever, along those lines. I get that. Right. You're like, I would really like you to give me a little bit more support. As a parent, the way I look at it is, if my daughter said, "Hey, Dad, I'm gay," when I say I don't care, I don't mean I don't care as in if someone starts to give you shit for it, if someone tries to attack you over it, then you're on your own. What I'm saying is, if you would have come to me and said, or she'd have came to me and said, "Dad, I'm straight," okay.
I don't want to hear
look, I
about
think
it.
we
My
all
fingers would
accept
be
on
in
this
my ears.
podcast that we're born that way.
Don't tell me anything.
You're born the way you are. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
I think Rich says he views it more from, and still your father. Matters not.
You know what I'm saying?
No.
Now, if you're talking about Aaron, damn it, give me a second. Let me finish. Now, if you're talking about putting something to a vote, supporting, rights, yes, yeah, obviously I care about that. But as far as my child saying, I'm gay or I'm pansexual or bisexual or asexual, whatever. I mean, I'm happy for them that they've figured out what they are, because that has to be a load off their mind. But ultimately, their sexuality, when it comes to who they choose as a partner, is really none of my business. Mm-hmm. It really isn't. I mean, when you're an adult, who you date is really none of your parents' business. And I guess that I forgot myself what it was like to be a kid and say something and get a kind of a response where you were expecting something a little bit more. Yeah, something with a little bit more.
I can see you want to know someone's in your corner.
Well, I think the lesson here is that language matters, and when you choose simple words like "I don't care," those can be easily misconstrued, and it really doesn't speak to any greater point. If I was to be more eloquent, I would say I'm a strong believer in personal freedoms of all types, and I don't judge people on what they like to do in private. That's what I mean when I say I don't care. It's not that hey, they want, you to go out and vote to support this or that bill for whatever rights for people. Yeah, I'm going to go do it for anybody's rights. But that doesn't mean I care about what they do in their bed. I'm doing it because I don't care, and I want other people to not care about what I do in the privacy of my own home.
I'm speaking clearly from the viewpoint of the person on the podcast with no children. And you're probably not at this point yet, but Rich probably is. Don't you probably just get to a point with your kids as an adult where it just becomes to the end all be all to whatever is happening is, will this cost me money? It's not costing money. I don't care.
Maybe it's me, but once they're of a certain age and once they start going out and entering the world, you want them to be hurt as little as possible by the world. You want them to be shit on by as little as possible by the world, and you want them to be happy. Mm-hmm. That's what's more important.
Plus, if your daughter marries
it's cliche
a girl,
as shit. But we were all. I guarantee you, we heard this from someone in our families at one point. All of us. If you want to be a ditch digger and that makes you happy, just be the best ditch digger that you can be.
Yeah.
If that's what you really want to do, And I'm not equating that to sexuality. That I'm just saying as an example of
they shit shoveler in my house.
How I feel, And I guess to me it's so strange to think that someone coming out as anything but straight in today's world is that big of a deal. And Monique, and that's something I'd ask you. I mean, you said your best friend's lesbian. You came out as pansexual. I talk about Corey all the time on this show, to the point where if I have him on here, there might be a listener who's like, damn, it feels like I know this dude because Rich talked so much about him. Corey's gay. It's not something that's it's not something that happens in the big city anymore. It's everybody knows somebody who's gay, so you can't demonize them as this thing that you don't know and it's scary and all this shit. And so that's how I perceive the world. I mean, is it that way in the high school and the college age kids that you run across?
No, it's not we're going to be judged. I accidentally outed myself to my entire English class the other day and nobody said anything to me about it because it's just normal at this point. But being somebody who's not straight, even though obviously I've always grown up in a household where everything is accepted and you can do and be whoever you want to be. But for me, it was still hard and it was still scary to accept the fact that I wasn't straight, which makes absolutely no sense, and I could never ever tell you why, but that's just how it is. And so for me to finally come to terms with that, I started questioning my sexuality when I was 13 or 14 years old, and I finally admitted to myself that I wasn't straight when I was 16. So that took me a really long time to finally accept, I guess. And then I finally figured it out, and then I decided to come out, and it was just my dad obviously was just kind of like, yeah, I don't care. And then he was just kind of like, I don't even actually really think that your sexuality exists. Like, pansexual is not really a real thing, but, like, you do you. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it was hard to, like, put a name on it, especially because a lot of people don't know what being pansexual is. And I also always felt like I wasn't, like, gay enough to come out. So then it was like, it shouldn't be a big deal, but it also is. And, like, it doesn't make any kind of sense to anybody who's not me. Like, I don't know how to put it into words, if that makes sense.
Well, I guess...
No, it does. It does make sense.
But I could put on the table for... It sounds like... I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but it sounds like you're not my daughter, or you're not in the family anymore, get out of my house. It's not really on the table anymore. And I guess for us, when our generation, when that was still on the table, like I said, I don't care was one of possible possible best case scenarios in our age group. What, you don't care? Oh, that's great. Like,
or is my friend who came out as gay when he was like 17 to his parents. His parents were like, "Well, we're glad that you finally accepted it."
Damn.
The only conversation I had with either of my parents was with my mother, and she was upstairs. So I was calling up the stairs to tell her I was leaving, and she was like, "Aaron, are you gay?" And I said, "No," and she's like, "Oh, good." I mean,
is that what your friends say?
She's like, "I don't have anything against gays, but I just don't want you to be one."
What?
I'm like, okay,
Mom, this conversation took a weird turn.
Okay, I'm going to theater class. Bye.
You started super tolerant, and you went the other way.
Yeah.
Well, no, I think
I don't think that was uncommon for my mother, though, either. I don't want to totally put her out there. I think that was the most common attitude was, that's fine and whatever, as long as it's not my family, and then it's a big deal. I'm sorry, Monique, go ahead.
No, you're good. I think we've definitely taken forward strides, and obviously, like, we have marriage equality now, which is super cool, and obviously it's way more accepted now than it was 20 years ago, and I'm not trying to knock that at all, and I think that's great. But we're still, I mean, I've had people make homophobic comments to me at school, and like I said, I'm dating a boy, so to me, everybody else, I, like, look straight.
There's always, I don't think we're ever going to get rid of the person who will, think that that's a way to get at somebody. It's like men are always going to think fart jokes are funny.
Because teenagers are always going to exist.
Right. And whatever they can find out, whatever the tool they can use as leverage against another person that they feel is different than them, they will.
You are a teenager. You go for the throat when you are insulting somebody.
Yeah, for sure. I think I was just scared, like, I wasn't going to be able to handle those, which is really dumb because I get insulted, like, all the time because I'm a feminist and everybody labels me as, like, crazy and, like, it's normal for me. I don't really care. I don't know why I thought this would be any different, but it's not. Mm-hmm. But, like, again, I have people, like, I have a really big family. Like, I have a lot of aunts, uncles, cousins, and it hasn't even really been addressed with my family because I kind of, like, came out on Facebook instead of making, like, a huge announcement because it's not that big of a deal to, like, make a huge announcement about it. And I got into an argument with one of my cousins, and he was like, that's literally not a thing. Like, you are bisexual, and you really need to just stop, like, trying to get attention, blah, 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 blah. And, like, that's kind of what I was worried about coming out. But I also know that my family's not going to, like, disown me over something like that. They might make comments like that, but I'm never going to, like, lose my family because of it.
Hey, there's another generational thing right there.
What's that?
That I can tell you, our age group, that is not a thing for your Facebook status. That is something
right.
That is something you tell people. Like, but it's,
Well, I mean, I told
you've never not known Facebook or social media or internet. We're old guys. Computers showed up for us and the internet showed up in high school. I mean, you've always known this. So, I mean, this.
Right. But, like, I came out to everybody, like, that I'm really close with before, like, I put it on Facebook. Like, all of my friends knew. I told my mom, I had kind of told my dad, but I had kind of just, like, made a couple jokes like, haha, I'm pansexual, I like pans, ha 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 ha, because, like, I was scared of his reaction because I thought it was going to be how it was, but more severe, I guess. So, like, I kind of, like Rich said, like, tried to be funny about it, but it didn't really come across, I think, until I actually came out on Facebook, and he was like, oh.
And,
is there a mood icon for that?
It wasn't until the Facebook status changed that shit got real.
It says, feeling pansexual.
I love your father. You know, he's like a brother, but he can be. Paul, I know you're going to listen to this episode, and you probably never listened to one before, and I'm about to rip your ass. So, congratulations, welcome to the family, asshole. He can be kind of dense about certain subjects. He doesn't pick up hints. You probably said something about pansexual, and he thought, so you want to have sex with a flute?
Yeah,
like,
right.
You know,
what, you want to fuck a goat boy from mythology?
Yeah, playing a flute or whatever that he played. Yeah, like he probably went right over his head for a second.
I think he kind of got it, but like we just never like talked about it until I came out on Facebook and I like had mentioned to him the post, and I was like, I'm really surprised you didn't like say anything on there. And he was like, yeah, well, I wanted to. And then we kind of got into that argument in person. And then he was just like, yeah, like, I really don't think this is a thing. And it took a couple days for us to just like calm down and like sit down and actually have a conversation about it without like screaming and yelling at each other, for him to finally be like, you know, I might not think this is real, but I also can't tell you like what to do with your life or who you're attracted to and what your sexuality is, because, you know, he doesn't live in my mind. So like, obviously we're fine. And like, I love my dad and we fight all the time, but we still have a good relationship because I'm basically him 2.0. But I don't know. It was just
no comment at all. Well, let's put a definition to this, or draw some distinctions between what is bisexual and pansexual for people that are still listening. Going, I still don't get the difference.
This is how I think of it. It's bisexual. When people think of bisexuality, you're either attracted to this girl or that guy. And pansexual means you're attracted to this person and their gender is kind of a secondary attribute.
Right, yeah.
It could have gone either way in your mind, right?
Right, and people who are bisexual still have a tendency to like lean towards one gender a little bit sometimes, not always.
Right.
But there are some people who are like kind of attracted to girls, but like they mainly date guys or vice versa. And because to them, gender still kind of has something to do with it, and who they are like as a person physically still has something to do with it.
But you could be bisexual but never have a serious relationship with somebody of the same sex, because it would always be something different than being with a woman.
I mean,
for some people,
anybody who wasn't a boy, because it's really weird. I came to terms with my sexuality after I got into my relationship with my boyfriend. Right now, we've been together for like a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's always something I kind of knew, but I like never just put a label on it and finally like came out. And that was really weird for him too, I think. But he's been really cool about the whole thing. But like as somebody who's pansexual, you don't really fall in love with people. Like, okay, I was writing about this in my English class the other day, and I was talking about, like, love at first sight, and how, like, to me, that never, ever made sense as a child, because I always had crushes on people because, like, they were funny, and they made me laugh, and they made me happy. Mm-hmm. Versus looking at somebody, like, obviously I can still look at somebody and find them attractive, but to me, that really doesn't matter. Like, people say that all the time. But, like, it truly does not matter to me what you look like, who you are physically, as long as you make me happy, and, like, I'm happy with you, and we're good, then that's all that matters to me.
Right.
Well, I mean, I can't argue with the logic. It's just general acceptance. Like, hey, it's live and let live.
It's actually, to me, it sounds like you're not shallow when it comes to looks, to where it's not the. I mean, obviously, for most people, some sort of attraction to them physically on some level is important. Probably, and with a lot of people, it's probably in the top one or two. Sounds to me It's a little bit. If I'm hearing what you're saying correctly, Monique, sounds like it's a little bit farther down on the list. For
sure, like if you're not like a decent person, like Andrew, for example, that's my boyfriend's name. We knew each other for probably a year and a half before we started dating. I've known him for like 3 years now, and we've always gotten along really well. Like he's always been really funny, super nice, and we were really close friends before we started dating. And because we were really close friends and I really got to know him, and like I found out a lot of things like about his past and just like kind of who he is and how he interacts with people, and like just talking to him, like there was a connection. which sounds really cliche and stupid when it's coming out of my mouth, but that's the truth. And, you know, like, I didn't fall in love with him because he's cute. I fell in love with him because he's super cool and he makes me happy and he makes me laugh. And he's just genuinely like a good person. Like, that's really important to me. And by good person, I mean his morals match mine, because obviously people have different ones and everybody has their own idea of a good person. But so yeah, I don't know. It definitely isn't important to me what you look like.
All right. So if your age group is so live and let live, and tolerance and acceptance are the MOs, which is good, which is we're not debating that as a bad thing. This question I have, man, I don't want to speak for Rich and Aaron, but why the militants? Why we're so, we want acceptance and tolerance, but when it comes to beliefs rubbing up against yours, why does the attitude shift from everybody love everybody to...
Maybe I can put a finer point on this, because I wanted to bring up, let's talk about feminism, right? Because you said you're a feminist.
Yes,
and
I am.
You probably know who Milo Yiannopoulos is, right?
Hang on. No, I don't think I do. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
I think I've heard the name, I just can't.
Well, this is a man who has been extremely critical of feminism, and it was his views on feminism and other things that spurred protests at speaking engagements that he had at a couple of colleges.
Is that the guy with the video who went viral? And he's like talking to the girl, and he was talking about, I think one of them was abortions and transgender people, and that one like went super viral.
That sounds like him. I've seen so much.
Maybe.
All right, that's so. I think
he
I
was
know
probably averaging a couple videos a day at one point.
Right. So, I guess the reason I brought him up in the protests at his speaking engagements is because a lot of people in support of him wanted to use free speech as a guard, which that wasn't really about free speech. Free speech is about freedom to speak from fear of consequence of the government coming down on you. If other people want to judge you, that's their freedom. But actually trying to stop the event from happening, I thought that was actually too far. Like, you know, if he's got some ridiculous ideas and you think he's a horrible person, that's fine. But if he's got an audience to speak to, let him speak. And if anything, we can at least identify publicly who these horrible people are. Because they're there. They're not going away just because you chased them off with a rally or a demonstration or even some violence. If anything, you've given them a common enemy and a cause.
It seems silencing someone with an opposing viewpoint is counteractive to your mission of everyone being equal.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I know that I personally get called out all the time for, like, when I argue with people, they bring that up every time, and they're like, well, if you're so, especially, again, my dad, he's like, well, if you're so accepting, like, why can't you just accept, like, my views on it? And I feel like there's a difference between, obviously, like, there's religious freedom, right? And we have Christians who, you know, a lot of them think that gay people shouldn't be able to get married because, like, it's against the Bible.
Right.
Even though we have separation of church and state, that doesn't register for some reason. And so, like, people are like, well, we shouldn't do this because of the Bible. We shouldn't do this because of that. And just being gay is wrong in general. And I'm not out here telling you that being a Christian is wrong, even though I'm an atheist.
Right.
Like, if you want to, like, practice your religion, like, that's fine. But, you, like, other people don't get to make my choices for me. And I think that's, like, a huge part of, well, I don't think, I know it is. That's a huge part of the reason is why I identify as a feminist and I'm an advocate for LGBTQ rights, is because, like, everybody's entitled to their opinion, but you're not entitled to, like, tell people, how do I want to word this? Like, trans kids. Like, I know people who are trans, and I have had family literally come out on Facebook and be like, trans people aren't real. Like, they don't exist. You're just asking for attention, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And you can't.
Well, that's just factually incorrect that they don't exist, but that's beside, okay.
But, like, you can't say that
they're
because
there,
you don't
they
live
exist.
inside. that person's head. Like, obviously, like Rich just said, they exist. Like, they're standing right in front of you. They are real.
Right. But they're thinking, what they're saying is it's a made-up problem.
Right. Like, this isn't a real issue, blah, 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 blah. Like, why is this just now a thing? And I'm like, it's been a thing for a really long time. But I feel like when the Women's March happened on January 21st, not the one that, like, the Day Without Women thing that happened yesterday, because I haven't looked into that enough to be able to talk about it, but there were a lot of people on my Facebook that I got into, like, arguments with, and they're like, women, like, they're still equal, or they're already equal, not they're still equal, like, we're already equal, and, like, we already have all of our rights, and, like, there's no reason for us to be protesting. I actually got into this argument with somebody this morning, and it's like, I don't even know how to address that, because people obviously, just like I'm already dead set in my views, they're already dead set in their views, and neither of us are going to change our mind.
Yeah, it's really hard to argue with somebody when their counter is, well, you're just mentally ill.
You're
imagining things. What you believe doesn't even exist, and you're like, well, Jesus.
I also keep being told it's a solidarity thing, and it is in a way a proactive move, because now these rights are being threatened. With a Republican Congress and an insane president.
Aaron, addressing what you said about how it's hard to refute and have a discussion with someone, whatever, when you say, well, they go, you're mentally ill. What you're saying isn't real. I would say, coming from, because Monique, I tend to side more with you on a lot of these issues versus, let's be honest, usually the opposition is born in religion of some sort. That's where this opposition's coming from. If it's not religion, it's from puritanical views that are distilled from this religious text. And it's pretty much all of them. So for them to say, well, what you're saying is make-believe, it's fake. I'm not the one that prays to someone I can't see. I'm not the one that believes in talking snakes and burning bushes, and if I blow myself up in the name of whatever imaginary friend I have in the sky, that I'm rewarded in the afterlife for it. So who here is dealing in reality and who here is dealing in fairy tales?
The Santa Claus theory.
True.
Right there, those people, you're not going to change their mind, because their faith is an irrational thing. To say that I know what's going to happen to me because I have faith in it is irrational. And you're trying to deal with logic and reason with someone who's waved goodbye to that when it comes to these subjects a long time ago.
No, I completely agree. And I wish that I could just say that, but then I will get the response that, like, well, now you're talking down to me because of my religion, like what happened to everybody having their freedom of speech and their rights and blah, 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 blah. But
okay, no, I don't mean to interrupt, but this is where I say, you're right. You have freedom of speech, and I have freedom to call you a dumbass for what you just said.
Yeah. Well,
you're not wrong.
That's how it works.
But doesn't this get to the core of the problem with social media in general? The fact that everything is distilled down to, a photo and a caption or a certain number of characters, that we, in an effort to be brief, we are coming off as very coarse. Even if we do have more complex thoughts on them, even if I wrote it all out on my Facebook page, nobody's going to read this shit. I got to keep it short.
Yeah, I tend to do that on Facebook, like, all the time.
Did you go on for
constantly?
You write long posts on Facebook?
I do often, and I don't actually. Half the reason I do it is just to rant, so that way I'm not actually ranting directly to somebody and annoying the crap out of them. Because on Facebook, like, they can just scroll past it, and obviously they're not, like, just brushing me off. At least that I know of.
You can always scroll past it.
Right.
I mean, so you choose, like, your feed. So the people who get outraged by everything, I'm like, you're kind of choosing to be outraged by certain things.
You need to apply that technology to real life.
Right.
I scroll past this conversation.
I wish. But, like, some people don't understand that either. Like, people like to come on my Facebook and attack me on my Facebook. And then I get yelled at for arguing back with them because I'm a child and that's disrespectful. But at that point, I'm like, you came onto my post now. Like, I won't go on anybody else's post most of the time and say anything. And if I do, I make sure to be like super respectful about it and be like, dude, I know this is your opinion. I'm just playing the devil's advocate, but like, what if this? And that tends to like, I don't think it's just people on my side who get super angry and defensive. I think that we get called on it more, but I see people on Facebook all the time where the second I'm like, actually, like, that's not true. And they just jump down my throat so quickly to be like, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. That's fake news. You're wrong. Donald Trump is great. End.
You are fake news.
Like
Isn't this we go through this about once every other show. What you're saying with the fake news, we go through it quite a bit. We've gotten to the point where if you hear a news report you don't agree with, you just call it fake news and you can dismiss it out of hand. You don't even have to talk about it. That's just a way of saying, I'm not even going to look at what you're showing me.
No, that's literally my best friend, not my lesbian best friend, but my other best friend. I got into an argument with her aunt on Facebook today, and it was about like whether women are equal or not. And she was like, these people are fighting for no reason because women are already equal. And then someone else commented on it because this woman's crazy and I would never. I mean, I've tried to argue with her in the past, but like I don't care to anymore. Like it's not worth it. And somebody else commented on it, and they were like, actually, I literally just read a news story about somebody who's literally being forced to raise her baby with her rapist because she chose not to abort it, and he wouldn't let the baby get adopted, so now they're raising it together because she wasn't just going to give like the child up. And she posted screenshots of the article, and she immediately was just like, that's fake news. That's fake news. You believe whatever you want, but that's not true. And it's just like, you guys are getting to the point where we make a valid argument, and you're just like, that's fake news.
Well, okay.
Well, I guess we have to define what valid argument is to you and to us.
Yeah, well, right.
That's
no.
where
I'm just talking
the gray area shows up.
I think fake news is a fading. It's a passing fad. It's not here to stay. Even I wish I could remember the example, but
but echo chambers aren't. That's the thing.
Right. No.
What was Bill Maher talking about this past week? The silos.
But
the left silo and the right silo.
But fake news has been used as a way to deflect any argument in a way that doesn't even put you into the echo chamber. It says, you're not even entering my echo chamber. We're not even going to talk about this because it's not a real story. And I believe it was on CNN, and I don't remember who it was that was hosting, but they had somebody on that, they were talking about a story, and their counter was, well, that's fake news. And he said it twice, and he's like, look, the host said,
that can't be a comeback. That's not an acceptable comeback.
He said, I brought you on to talk about the stories in the news and the facts we have at hand. I thought that's what we were going to do. If you're going to dismiss the stories out there and the stories on our channel as fake news, then I guess we don't have anything to talk about. And gave him one more chance to come up with a proper response to his question. And he's like, I don't know what else to tell you. These are fake news stories. He's like, all right, goodbye. He just went to commercial. Yeah, we have nothing left to talk about. And that's the appropriate response. If the president is going to stand up there and say that is a fake news story or a certain organization is fake news, then all the journalists get up and walk out. Because the president has plenty of ways to get his message out. It's not in the old times where if we don't have a press corps on every word that comes out of the president's mouth, then we don't know what the fuck is going on. Right. We have a president who tweets about it constantly. We know what the fuck is going on. And I'm not saying that the press corps are superfluous. It's that if he's not going to have a practical conversation, you don't have to be there for it. You can stand outside and report on something else, or report on the fact that there's a reason why you're not in that room. Because
you can report on the fact that you're standing outside and why you are.
Yes, exactly. I think I'm really hoping we see that eventually. I think the tide is starting to turn when it comes to the press because they have nowhere left to turn.
We've somehow given this is fake news or the term fake news that somehow become the politically correct equivalent to your mama. And when the fuck did that happen? And we can't do that. The fact that someone can sit there on a national news show, national news network, and sit there and get away with that. Well,
it's also
fuck that.
Why
are we allowing that?
It's very interesting how it was co-opted too, because it really did start out as a real thing. When we started talking about fake news stories, we were talking about news stories circulated on Facebook, like the ones about Hillary Clinton's secret sex slave ring run out of pizzerias. And there were ridiculous stories that were being circulated as fact. That's what we were talking about. And that was probably one of the smartest moves that Donald Trump has made, is simply co-opting that. He
created himself an all-out excuse.
And now he doesn't even have to argue.
It's a boilerplate ejector switch.
He doesn't have to have talking points.
Whatever, fake news.
He doesn't have to have a counter or a better idea for anything. He can simply say, what you're reading is fake news, and then go off on a rant about how the press is the enemy of the people.
It's the old white guy version of the mic drop.
Right.
Your fake news.
Can we do mic drop on the mic drop, please? Can we drop the last mic already?
I know, right? Yeah, that new Verizon commercial's out of hand with, was it Thomas? Whatever. Yeah. Thomas Middleditch.
It's ridiculous. And you know what?
I mean, so Monique
you know what, Verizon? You're the reason that people think that wireless microphones just make your voice come out of the sky.
Yeah, I know, right? You don't need to have them hooked up to a PA system. Look, it's wireless mic.
When I worked at Guitar Center, I had a lady that was like, where does my voice come out of? I'm like, out of the PA you hook it up to. And she's like, why do I need a PA? It's wireless.
Oh, Jesus.
And we had that conversation.
It's not a megaphone.
Yeah, this isn't Mr. Microphone. This isn't 1974.
Hey, good looking.
Monique, you said something earlier I thought was interesting. I wanted to ask you a question about it. You said, okay, you're a feminist and you believe in equal rights for everybody, correct?
Yes.
Okay. How is that different than being an egalitarian?
I don't think they're actually really... I'm getting an echo, or are you guys getting an echo from me?
Yeah, I get an echo. I just do my best to talk through it.
You guys are getting...
You guys
are getting echo back throughout? I mean...
I'm hearing my own voice echoing in my headphones. I don't know if that's what she's talking about.
Yes, that's the same thing. I'm getting like an echo for myself. It just went away. All right. Anyways, so I don't actually think that they're that different. I think we put the term feminism on it because it's women in most situations, there are a couple exceptions to this, are considered lesser than men, or they're not as, like everybody says we're already equal, but there are some things that we're just really not. And so the term feminism kind of leans more towards like telling you what we're fighting for, because like we can say it's just like Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter. Like obviously everyone matters. Like that's my whole thing. It's like every single person matters. But like white people, for example, for the most part, don't need a movement to tell people that like they're equal to everybody else, because everybody already knows that. And a lot of men are never discouraged from doing jobs and things like that, which is not true actually, and I'm not going to make a blatant statement like that because it's just not true. But there's a lot of things that men have the upper hand in, and we're trying to like counter that. But then
okay, well, I mean,
let me
try to narrow it down to like one specific subject. Like, okay, when it comes to the subject of abortion, I'm pro-choice. Personally, it's a personal issue. It's a rights issue. It's your body. Okay, if you want to evict that fetus from your body, for lack of a better way to put it, that's your right to do so. So be it. Okay. But when I hear feminists go, men are trying to take this from us. Really, the only men that could really take the right for you to have an abortion from you are the judges who would make a decision that would make it illegal.
Well, right.
Men can oppose abortion all they want,
like
verbally,
a lot of men
and march up and down, but they can't stop you from getting one. Do you see what I'm saying there? So It seems like the language is antagonistic and it's adversarial, and it's needlessly so. You really don't need to say, men are trying to stop us from getting abortions. Men keep your hands off my uterus. It's not men. It's more judges keep your gavel and your laws out of my body, is what the battle cry from my point of view should be. Do you get where I'm coming from with that?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. But when we have, like, obviously we've never had a female president. So when you have people who are men making decisions about women's body, like I feel like a lot more women are pro-choice than guys, and that's just my experience. That could be totally untrue. I don't know. But like in my experience, I've met a lot more women who are pro-choice than men, because a lot of men are like, that's not fair, because like, what if somebody got pregnant with my child and then they aborted it without my permission?
Okay, well, here's the deal. This is where people are going to have to learn shit. Life isn't fair.
Yeah.
No matter how much we would wish it to be, we would want it to be. This isn't a utopian Star Trek society. This is reality, and life is not fair. Nature is not fair. Biology is not fair. There is no equality in those things on its own. We have to force equality because, I mean, look at nature.
You have to force it, huh?
Yeah.
I think our eyebrows just went up over here.
Nature. Look at nature. If you look at animals, are they all equal? There's a food chain. Okay, there's a food chain. Now, we supposedly have evolved in higher consciousness than animals, so we're capable of empathy and compassion, whereas some people argue that animals aren't. All right, and that's a different discussion, but let's just say for the sake of argument, okay, that they're not. So we should be held to a higher standard.
Well, but okay, so empathy, though, is not something that we invented. We didn't form this as an idea, or there was one really smart chimp that eventually started being nice to the others. This is it is the result of an evolutionary process that started in pack animals that just did better off when they were nicer to each other. They could live together, groom each other, keep each other company, hunt together. I mean, so the concept of empathy does come from nature and does exist in animals. Absolutely. It's not some higher thinking of like we've evolved to the point where we can now consider other people to be equal and not just be every man for himself. Because even when we were chimpanzees swinging in trees, we were hanging out with each other. But
even in that pack, there's a hierarchy.
Yes.
There is the one
yes.
lion that dictates, or the alpha wolf that dictates how shit's going to go.
That's where I absolutely agree with you, that it also part of our evolutionary process is a natural hierarchy that we now, with our more evolved brains...
This wolf's getting shit done. He's the head wolf.
Right. And there's still something to be said for that, certainly. And that's part of living in a society, is knowing who's good at what and letting them do that thing. That's part of being cooperative. But yes, what you're saying, Rich, is that now that we have evolved past the point where it's not just about the strongest guy anymore, that we do have to have an artificial leveling of the playing field, so to speak, to ensure that it's not just the strongest, tallest white dude who always wins.
Hey, in the animal community,
am I getting that right, Rich? Or am I putting words into your mouth?
Yeah. For the most part, we're going down the same path. The way I see it is that what I'm getting at is that it seems like we worry about and we focus on things in such a way that when you approach someone and you already are approaching them using language or whatever that is challenging them, then a person's natural instinct is to kind of bristle at that and come back at you. I mean, it's the whole fight, flight, or freeze.
Right.
When something that is, you are threatened with something, those are one of the three things that we're going to do. You're either going to fight it, you're going to run from it, or you're going to freeze up.
But there's a definite blurring there in people's concept of that, because while I'm totally supportive of and really interested in the idea of where we came from evolutionarily, it's not a shield or an excuse for any type of behavior. If you want to point to chimpanzees and say, okay, if we came from these, well, look at these chimpanzees, they're territorial. How come they don't love this other group of chimpanzees? Instead, they raid their little area of the forest and kill them. Well, it's just not natural that people live together. That's why black people and white people shouldn't live together. It's not natural. That's part of our evolution.
Yeah, but if you look at, I guess I guess ultimately what I'm saying is if you look at the language and the labels we put on each other, the goal of humanity should ultimately to be as to be the least tribalistic as we can. And we just it seems like we're on a path to keep inventing labels and subgroups of those labels and more subgroups.
Yeah, shouldn't the ultimate
divide us all instead of going. The point is, to me, when I hear the term progressive, that means progressive for humanity, for society as a whole. That means we need to move all of us forward.
Like, aren't we just going for people, but we just keep slapping more and more labels on everything? Like,
I mean,
aren't we all just going for
equality
people?
To where if someone goes, if someone like going back to what Monique was saying earlier about coming out to your parents, isn't the end goal of equality is if someone goes to their parents, I'm gay? Actually, the end point of equality should be it doesn't matter if you're gay, doesn't matter if you're straight, doesn't matter if you're pansexual, bisexual, whatever the fuck. You're just you, and people accept you for you.
Yeah, shouldn't the ultimate answer be I don't care? Like, isn't that generally what you're going for?
Eventually. But
in a perfect world.
Right. But like if we take every single minority's problem and try to lump them into one and fix it, that's not going to happen. Like
But that's what happens. I guess that's what we're saying. That's what you see from the media. That's what seems to be going on. I would think if I'm a young black male right now, I would have to run serpentine everywhere I go. Like, if I've just judging based on what the media's fed me since 2015. Everyone's out to get me. I should wear Kevlar everywhere I go. Something like that's the kind of diet that everyone's being fed. I think is what we kind of see and point out and complain about every week. Because it's not everyone has the same problems anymore. We're shining a light more on certain issues that need to have lights shown on them, but it just seems like the broad brush is brought out a lot more than people claim it is from every side.
So obviously, and like I've gotten into this debate on Facebook, like the reason that there are like, let's just say like Black Lives Matter and feminism are two separate movements. I've had people be like, well, why don't we just all just fight for everybody's equal rights and then like problem solved, except for people like black people have different problems. Like somebody being racist towards a black person is different than somebody being homophobic towards like a gay person. And there are different pathways that you have to take to solve those. Like you have to address each individual problem in order to fix them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of like saying, why don't we just have one pop? I mean, everybody likes Coke, right? Everyone raise your hand in the nation. Okay, everyone's just going to drink pop, Coke.
Hey, guess what, America? Have a Coke and a smile. Shut the fuck up.
Right,
yeah,
I mean,
go over like a turd in a punch bowl.
It's definitely oversimplifying it, but yeah, just because the core concept of all of these problems that we're talking about in our society are about equal rights, about people all being treated the same. There's also the concept of you can't handle every person the same. You can't handle every concept the same way. It doesn't all have the same solution. And if it was as magical as just going, okay, everybody's going to be woke on 3, then that would be great. But again, we don't live in a perfect world.
Well, the broad brush loves to be brung out when you talk about straight white males, though. I mean, that's
okay. I mean,
which
fine, whatever.
But I've always, but think about this. Why always demonizing the straight white males? Let's just look at the census data. You're going to need these people on your side if you want change to happen.
But isn't the bigger point, what the fuck does it matter to you? Have you ever had your job felt threatened because of your ethnicity or gender or anything else about you? Have you ever felt like you're in a
if
minority
you want change
situation?
To happen, you can't sit there and shame a majority of the population hoping they'll come over to your side and way of thinking.
But Aaron, part of the problem with what you're saying is now when you say straight white males, they don't have, their job, living situation, whatever, threatened because their sexuality, their ethnicity.
I'm just reading.
Their sex.
Yeah.
Here's Okay, but you're speaking in generalities, and if you flip the coin over, all of a sudden that's a cardinal sin in today's society as far as the culture wars go.
Yeah, I don't buy this flipping it argument in any situation, really.
Well, if your goal is equality, you should.
Yes. Again, but this is in some non-existent utopia.
Well, I'm just saying, we seem to come everywhere now from the place of everybody should be equal, everybody should be included. I'm just saying that's where everything seems to come from now. If that's your ultimate goal, then we need to look at everything through that prism.
The argument against the movie Get Out. Well, if you flip the roles and it was a white kid being chased by a bunch of black people that looked suspicious, then you could never get away with that.
And that's true.
It's true, but so what? And it's a bullshit argument.
It's true, but it's a bullshit argument.
It's a bullshit argument because what it's doing, what we're talking about when we're talking about movies like Get Out is, I know this. I haven't seen the movie, so I'm not speaking from that angle. But I did hear an interview with Jordan Peele, and it's very much about how we treat race in general in the history of white people and black people living together. So I don't know.
I feel like I kind of agree because, like, straight white men aren't and never have been oppressed in America. Like, America was founded on like white men, and that's
go back further. I mean, the birth of the Catholic Church. The white men have been in power since then. That's
right. Yeah. So like, it's like, I feel like besides people trolling you on the internet and saying, "But straight white men," like, there's never been any issues like that. So to me, it's kind of BS to make the argument that, like, it's not okay to do that because it's been happening to people who are people of color or people who are gay for how long up until, like, right now in the grand scheme of things. Like, it hasn't been very long.
To me, it's economic oppression, all right? And a lot of these issues that we're talking about are born out of economic oppression, all right? Upward mobility has dwindled since probably the 70s, early 80s. All right. The income gap between people at the top and the middle class has just been getting farther and farther away from each other. All right. CEOs make 400 times what they made in 1980. The guy working in the factory makes 10 times than what he made. So what's the best way to stir up what's the best way to keep people, their minds off of the fact that the system we are in is screwing us all unless you're at the top? Oh, let's get them fighting over a bunch of bullshit.
No, but all that bullshit that you call it does all kind of lead back to that economic equality. When you talk about economic equality is linked with opportunities for employment. Why should my money go towards fucking helping people to get health care? That's not a right. Oh, but you don't have a problem with bombing people in other countries. Your money going towards your tax money going towards that. It's the mind fuck that's put on us to where I got mine, you didn't get yours, you didn't earn it, so you're not allowed to have it. And so we squabble over that, and then we break it up even more into that. Mm-hmm. Then it gets tribal. Instead of just white middle class looking down on white trash, living in the mountains somewhere, pissing in an outhouse, now they start lumping in black people with them. Now they start lumping in immigrants with them. It's right. It's just dividing us at the bottom because then you can't get anything done. And we're finding out just how core to the principles of the Trump administration racism and isolationism is, because at least maybe this isn't news to everybody, but I'm finding out more how central Sessions as well as Bannon is to Trump's administration. I didn't realize that how much of a history those two had, and this whole thing is really their brainchild.
At a Klan rally in the late 60s.
Yeah, I mean, Sessions used to go on Bannon's radio show and talk all kinds of racist nonsense.
The White Power Hour?
Non-shit. I just made up a term.
The White Power Hour with Steve and Jeff?
Non-shit.
But do you see what I'm saying? Look at those guys are not middle class white guys. Those guys are people who enjoy the upper class. And what's the best way to keep people at each other's throats? To start fucking dividing people up by the most basic shit. Are they darker than me? Do they look different than me? Do they pray different than me? Do they live in a different area than me?
I forget what book I read it. It's sure we all read it.
And we're trying to sit here and argue about bringing people together, and we can't even fucking get over that type shit.
Doesn't it all boil down to haves and have-nots? What book is that? We all had to read it. Some book we all probably had to read in middle school.
Animal Farm?
That's kind of broad, but okay.
No, but
there's a lot of books that deal with that.
No, but there was the people in the book were actually called. They were divided up into the haves and the have-nots.
Like what is it? Oliver Twist?
I can't remember. Fucking
no. Okay.
Brave New World?
No, I don't know.
I know it's not
list every book you read in high
school. But isn't it really what it gets down to in general? And now we're just subdividing our haves and subdividing our have-nots and pitting them. Now we're pitting our have-nots against each other and our haves against each other.
Well, look at history. Look at modern history in the U.S. when it comes to race relations. Okay, you had Malcolm X. Malcolm X was out there when he was speaking the words of Elijah Muhammad in the Nation of Islam, was saying the most divisive shit. Basically, if you took white man out, put black man in there, he sound like he's giving a speech at a Klan rally. He went to Mecca, realized that there are Muslims of all colors, of all nationalities he was sitting there praying with, sharing food with, sharing drinks with, came back to America, changed his tune, and the man was dead within a year, assassinated in front of his family. He was no longer useful. He was no longer useful to the Nation of Islam because they want their little niche into getting some is to divide people, is to find people who are dissatisfied in the black community and say, come on in, we're going to sit here and hate on some Jews and hate on some white folks, and we're going to get ours. And when he said, wait a minute, it's not about that, it's about people. It's not about what color you are, what country you come from. They no longer had use for him. And the government no longer had use for him because they couldn't use him as a scare tactic to whitey on the news every night anymore. Martin Luther King got out there and said it's not about the color of your skin, but the content of your character. And they blew his ass away.
Right. Well, while I do believe that Sessions and Steve Bannon are both inherently just racist people, that's kind of besides the point, because what makes them dangerous is the fact that they understand that they can use that racism and prey on it in other people and use it to control them. And once you give somebody, put a fear inside of them and give them a common enemy, then you can do whatever you want in defense of protecting those people.
Oh, man. There's a greater...
Yeah.
So I mean that as a point to why Martin Luther King was so dangerous, why his message was so dangerous. When you just start looking at people regardless of where they're from, it makes people less hesitant to say, let's go over there and bomb that country, invade this group of people.
Well, if you look at one of Malcolm X's last press conferences, he said they asked him about. He formed his own organization, and they asked him about them working with white people, and he said, and I'm paraphrasing, I can't remember the exact quote, but essentially what he said is there can be no black-white unity until there's black unity, all right? Until we stop the hatred amongst ourselves for whatever reasons, and that's case in point of what I'm talking about.
Ask the Jews
all
when
these
that
all these
shit
people
ends.
fighting for equal rights all have their little pet thing that they're fighting for, but ultimately, isn't it human rights is what we're supposed to be fighting for? I have no problem fighting for human rights. I have no problem, and human rights includes gay people, women, black people, everybody. You're human. That's the point, right? We were born free. It's the laws that tells us of the country that we were born in. It tells us what we can and can't do. The only thing you got to do when you're born is die. That's it. And human rights it's not given to you by the Constitution. It's not given to you by the government. You were born with it. Take it. It's fucking yours. That's what I'm getting at.
The finer
and when
point.
we use adversarial and divisive language and we cover it up by saying we're trying to get rights for this group and this group and this group, to Chris's point, you're possibly fucking kicking allies in the shin.
You can't bring everybody together while you're pushing everybody apart, I think is the broad point. Maybe trying
You know what
to make
scares
their
the
rich.
government more than anything? Any woman march, gay rights march, million man march, anything? If it was a human rights march and people of all colors, creeds, religions, sexual orientation were out there, that scared the fuck out of the government more than any other march that we've ever had.
Because you can't pin down a special interest if it's everybody.
Right, exactly.
Can I throw an analogy at you, Rich, here? When you, in response to what you were saying, that just trying to insult people into getting on the train of whatever that person's cause is not working with their master plan ultimately. But the way I see it is, and here's the analogy for you. Let's say you're in a relationship. You're with a woman. Doesn't have to be a woman. You're with another person. And that person is saying to you, hey, we need to talk. And you're like, yeah, well, I'm busy. I got to work late. Let's watch this movie instead. There's all kinds of reasons to avoid the talk about whatever it is, or just not being open to it in general, or being dismissive when the subject that your significant other wants to talk about is brought up. And then you have an argument about it, and you go, whoa, where's all this coming from? This is all of a sudden. How come we couldn't just talk about this rationally? Right? Well, we tried. There was attempts made to talk about these things rationally, like, hey, doesn't it make sense that we should just allow people to get married because they want to get married? And if same-sex couples are going to enjoy benefits of marriage, then anyone should be able to enjoy those same benefits equally. It's not like this was just brought up one day and somebody else said, I never thought about it. Yep, let's make that a law. And the next day it was passed. So that's where the anger comes from. And I'm not disagreeing that it's not always successful in turning somebody's mind around, but you could also argue that it's sometimes successful in making them heard, and you could go from I don't care to yeah, I'm with this cause, whereas the flip side of that, the person who is dismissive of it would have been anyway. Whether you're silent, whether you're loud, no matter how you demonstrated, there's always going to be a certain segment of the population that will dismiss you and will be unwinnable.
And I guess the most humane thing to do then is society, as we progress, you leave them behind. And eventually they're gonna go, wow, look at them up there, they're 50 miles ahead of us, and boy, they got some nice shit up there. They'll come around eventually, or else they'll be like the fucking Amish.
When they're making our laws, it's really hard to just move past it, though.
But you also vote, and it. When you talk about people have to be accepting of change, well, they should be, but ultimately when they're not, a lot of times there's consequences. Sometimes there's not. Sometimes the person goes through their whole life racist and nobody calls them on their shit or whatever it might be, and the world's an imperfect place. But for example, if you want to talk about just being successful in business, we talk a lot about, we've kind of ragged on millennials on this show. If anyone's listening, it's no secret. Bread and butter. There's a lot of talk about how maybe there's a different work ethic that this generation has compared to previous generations. But employers have understood this and have learned to work with it, right? It's not about getting your ideal employee. It's about getting a good person that can be loyal to your company and learning to work with their strengths and learning how to work with that person. So, whereas you might consider somebody to not be as equally motivated to do whatever because, I think previous generations are more about you start at the bottom, you work your way up, right? First job you get, dishwasher, and then you work your way up from that. Even if you start at a big firm, you start in the mailroom or something like that.
Yeah.
And that works sometimes. And that was a model that has worked for this country for a long time, but it was also based on a lot of other things that we held dear at the time that we don't any longer, like labor unions and strict laws controlling this stuff. But it's not really about, well, that person's gone and woe is me. Well, you've got to face facts. You're going to have to hire millennials at some point. These people have to be employed, and they are talented. So you have to find a way to work with them. So I guess to tie it into the bigger issue that we're talking about, I mean, yeah, there's going to be people that you won't be able to change, but there's going to be a lot of people that are just kind of forced to. And that does include politicians, because while the issues do seem scattershot and it's everything all at once, everybody's rights all the time, it can make a big difference. You know, the people that are keeping the closed-minded people in power right now are frankly dying off.
It's the best part about old people. Well, at least when they're in power.
And it's not like one of these movements, the women's movement, the gay rights movement, or transgender, or anything like that. It's not like one single movement is going to coalesce and put somebody into office. It's that it all leads up to the bigger point, and to the person that just accepts all these things as natural, and not to be closed-minded as natural, like previous generations were raised. So.
Well, let me ask Monique a question, because you
either learn to adapt or you die.
I really want to get her perspective, because you triggered, no pun intended, something in my head with what you were saying, Aaron.
Yeah.
Monique, when it comes to politicians, do you think most politicians are genuine in their beliefs that they say when they give speeches, or do you think they're just pandering to their voter base?
I think they definitely just say whatever they have to get as many people to vote for them, because in my opinion, it's all about having power and not actually fighting for whatever you believe in, if that makes sense.
Have there been any, I mean, I thought you said you were 18. Are you 17?
I'm 17.
You're 17, okay. So, I mean, obviously, as a 17-year-old, politics were not on my mind, but you're also kind of in a different situation where you don't have that convenience to just not be involved in politics.
Right.
You being you is political at this point in time. And are there any politicians out there that have really struck a chord with you and said, oh, there's a reasonable person. There's somebody I would vote for if I could?
Honestly, I agree with a lot of like what Bernie Sanders had to say, but at the same time, it's really hard for me to trust that, because he's out here preaching all of this great stuff, and like I'm agreeing with all of it, but then I step back and I'm like, that's exactly what he wants me to do, though. So like, does he actually genuinely mean what he's saying, or is he going to say that and then he's going to get into office and everything's going to be completely different?
Shit, that's cynical. You're only 17.
Yeah.
Wow,
I love it.
It took me 20 years to get to a good level of that.
And I wonder
of that level.
I wonder. I don't mean to call you on this, but is it age bias? Like, if these reasonable words were coming out of a younger person, would you be more open to thinking that this person was something different and not just the part of the establishment learning different phrases?
Probably not, to be honest.
Okay. I wonder how much I think that would make a difference, but
I think I would probably still vote for him anyways, because he's at least not preaching hateful things like Trump was a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. Like, obviously, kind of like the lesser of two evil things. But
right, and I think that's why he got the attention that he did, because he was actually willing to counter a lot of the ridiculous things that Trump said, whereas Hillary was like, oh, I'm above even responding to that. And I don't think that attitude, well, I think as a reasonable person, I think it seemed appropriate at the time. Like, I wouldn't want to respond to, wait, I'm sorry, say it. What did you say about the bonfire again?
Just put it under their ass and then force them to sit on put it under the chair and force them to sit on the hot seat and go, you're on that constantly. You never, as long as you're in public office, you're always on the hot seat. You are always pissing off your constituents one time. You're always one time of doing that away from being out of office, because we're your bosses. We hired you to do a job. You answer to us.
Do I remember this incorrectly, or it seemed like early on when Bernie started getting traction that was an issue that he was bringing up, is getting the money out of politics. And it seemed to taper off drastically as we got closer to the election.
Yeah.
The cynic in me says that's because he realized that it takes money to win an election, especially a presidential election.
Signs aren't free. Right. Airtime isn't free. Stickers aren't free.
I mean,
and he's not Trump. He's not going to come out and say something so outrageous they're going to give him $3 billion worth of free advertisement on the nightly news.
Right. I think he should have. I mean, personally, he should have been out there like, this is ridiculous, okay? I've raised a lot of money to even be considered, and this is a barrier that is superfluous to the job that I'm applying for, and here's what's being spent, right? Yeah, I had to ask donors for this money. This is a necessity that people believed in me, gave me this money because they believed that I had the right ideas for this nation, but it's ridiculous that this is a system that I'm forced to work in.
I just don't understand why, like, he is clearly your store-bought generic brand cola, and he was trying to get Coke or Pepsi to pick him up. As far as
Bernie?
Yeah, as far as running. He identifies himself in Congress as an independent, but he ran for the Democratic nomination. I still don't get that.
Okay, I see what you're getting at.
Like his whole shtick has been like, fuck this whole system, and then he tried to go for.
I think that's kind of the same thing I was describing too.
Like, what are you doing?
He understood that he had to play the game.
And he should have kept running.
In order to,
he'd have been president.
In order to get a real chance, he had to play the game. But he wasn't as open about how he was playing it, why he was running as a Democrat, even though he was an independent. And, you know, I think he should have talked a lot more about why he was an independent in the first place. You know?
I'm going to say you just from. It's only like 2 months in.
Right.
It's not even 2 months in.
Now,
it's an exhaustive 2 months.
I think, maybe in his defense a little bit, you could say that he felt like many people have said about the Republican Party that their beliefs didn't change, that the party strayed from their beliefs, right? And maybe this was him feeling like the party was coming back to being in line with his beliefs. And that's why he ran as a Democrat. But I don't remember hearing anything like that said. And it certainly wasn't for lack of election coverage.
I viewed it as the Sex Pistols sign into a major label. That's kind of how I viewed it. I was like, what are you doing, man?
Right, but
like like I guess, I don't begrudge you success, but I guess that's the music thing. But I guess the way what Bernie was doing is the whole time you've been screaming anti-establishment, and now you have gone for the approval of the establishment you've been railing against.
I think that
you're mixing your message, sir.
The really big question is, what is the next politician going to look like? The post-Trump politician. And,
Oprah.
And nobody knows. That maybe it is. Now, okay, Monique, I have another question for you then while we have you.
For sure.
Since we talked about, we're going to use you as a representative of millennials.
You're speaking for all young people, no pressure.
Not because we're trying to generalize, but because you're the only one we could get on the show. And I'm curious what your attitude is about media in general and what you consume to get your news.
That's a hard one. So I've always been taught not to ever actually believe anything like that.
Right.
Because things are obviously always twisted and turned and made to look better or worse than they actually are. So to me, I literally, like, if I see something that interests me, I will literally, like, read the article that, like, came up on Facebook or Twitter, and then I'll go, like, Google it, and I'll read, like, things from the right, like, a news station that's considered, like, on the right side, and then a news station that's considered on the left side, and then just see all, like, the different changes and stuff like that. So it's hard for me because you never actually know what's accurate and what's not.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I'm with you in that I do read conservative news stories as well as ones that I know lean more liberal. But I do actually feel like I come away with an opinion about it.
I mean, I do, but
not just like, you can't believe what you read. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth again, but maybe I'm oversimplifying it by stating it that way.
It kind of just depends on, like, what the subject is.
Right.
If that makes sense. Like, it's a case-by-case thing for me at least.
Right. Well, I guess it just really comes down to what type of person you are. I mean, a lazy person is not going to research anything. They're going to believe what pops up on their Facebook feed and not have time for anything else.
And that's basically what I was getting at earlier when I was saying you want to really scare the government. Take everyone who voted, which is what I think we worked it out. Wasn't it like a little under the third of the eligible voters in this country actually voted?
Yeah.
In this last presidential election. Mm-hmm. Split them in half. Let's just for simplicity's sake, half of them are hardcore conservatives, half of them are not hardcore, but half of them are conservatives, half of them are liberals.
So equally, we're talking about a sixth of the population.
Yes, now we're talking about a sixth. If we had just in the numbers,
like 18%
of people who voted,
and a half, I think, something like that.
Wasn't it like 59 million people voted total?
Oh no, it was whatever. What? No, it was more than that.
No, 59 million people voted for Trump.
Oh, okay.
What I'm getting at is if we had just the numbers of people who voted out there calling the government on their shit, then it wouldn't matter about the people who are too dumb to do the research or the people who just don't care about politics or the people who are radical on whatever, left, right, whatever. If you just had people who are like, look, we're tired of this bullshit. Both the two-party system is really just, do you like the puppet on the left or the puppet on the right? Meanwhile, it's the same person controlling both puppets. And we're tired of this shit. That's more of a threat to the status quo as far as politics go than any threats of, we're going to boycott Ivanka Trump's shit or, we're going to boycott till this person's taken off the air. Because that really doesn't affect politicians. All that is just that's just window dressing for them. It keeps everybody's mind off of what's really going on. I mean, it's like one of the things we keep harping at on this show, and I really think we need to keep hammering this point through. Kellyanne Conway puts her feet on the couch. People lose their fucking mind. Meanwhile, while people are paying attention to that, hey, we're going to pump up the military budget $56 million. Kellyanne Conway says the Bowling Green massacre, people lose their mind. That's at the front of the news. Meanwhile, in the back, barely mentioned is the fact that Dodd-Frank got overturned. That's what I guess I'm getting at. We need to not be so concerned with the bells and whistles and the decorations and actually look at what's underneath it.
Yeah, we have to see. Trump's playing a smokescreen. Is it okay? There's going to be all kinds of weird news stories about me. Well, let's just double that, and people won't know what to believe, and it'll all be fake news.
Yeah, it's like when you were a kid and you'd come in and you had smoked weed with your buddies, and your mom goes, "Are you high? Did you do dope?" And you go, "Yes, Mom. First I shot heroin, then I snorted coke, smoked some crack, injected some crystal meth in my dick." And she's like, "Okay, whatever, smart ass." It's like if you just overwhelm them with bullshit, they'll just get tired and go, "Fuck it, I don't even know what the truth is anymore. Just whatever." I mean, that's what he's doing. That's the thing. Here's the scary part. Trump is not a political mastermind. He didn't get where he's at because he's this evil person sitting behind going, I'm an evil genius. No, he's a fucking moron. He's a reality show celebrity. He's known for being known. Well, he's a Kim Kardashian without a sex tape.
Even the people who puppeteered him into this position didn't really think that they would have accomplished their goal. I mean, they don't know what to do with them.
Well, that's the
Russians. The Russians
freak
don't
us
even know
the
what to
fuck
do with
out
them.
as a nation. And I'm not talking about people to support them. People to support them they're going to support them no matter what. And I found that out, and that bums me out because as much as in 2008 and 2012, I wanted Obama over the Republicans. I could still point out the flaws in Obama. It seems like the people who really love Trump are incapable of doing that. Or unwilling to. I don't know which one.
Right. So there is a lot of stories about Trump supporters who are angry with him, and their quotes are like, "He's not doing what he said he could. He should have more immigrants out of the country by now."
It's been 7 weeks.
He wasn't they're not upset because he is doing anything that he said he was going to do. It's that he hasn't done enough yet.
And that's all these people. You ever try to do anything that involves the government? I mean, the wheels of government move very slowly. I don't know if you've heard that, people, but
yeah. Well, let's just...
It took 100 years to completely shake out slavery. Just saying.
Let's break this down to a simpler concept. Let's say your car. Like, yeah, you want your car done soon because you'd like to drive it again. But at the same time, you're not going to hang out next to the mechanic and go, come on, let's go. Because you want to make sure that he does the job right, because you don't want your wheels falling off while you're on the road, right? There's a certain amount of time has to be put into these things. And this idea that it's all going to change overnight, that Trump is getting people to believe, when all this shit that he's signing either is non-binding, can be overturned by draining the budget for whatever program he proposes by Congress, or overturned by judges. It's not about fast government. Who said the problem with government was it's too slow? I mean, we understood that there's too slow, and then there's like the molasses that we were in all through Obama's years, the 8 years of the lowest productivity out of any sitting government in American history, I think.
I don't know, that's kind of why, too, Trump says he's going to do all this crazy shit, and I just kind of just smile and nod, because I'm like, you got midterm elections coming up a year into your presidency.
That's why he's got to get it done now.
Half of this but no, in 2 years, there's no... They aren't even going to even get the contractors in place they need to build the wall in 2 years. Like, that's...
They're saying phase 1 of the healthcare plan is going to be passed in 2 weeks. That's what Paul Ryan said. That 2 weeks is his goal, while he does not have
great. You pass it all you want in 2 weeks. Execution is what's going to kill you.
But he doesn't even have currently. That gives him 2 weeks to turn over a lot of people who are against this, and those aren't Democrats.
But by the
those
time
are
it's going to be executed, the midterms are going to happen, and you probably got Congress changing over. Like that's why I don't fret things like this. It's like Trump.
Yeah.
His first few weeks, those executive orders, you'd look fancy, but they said a whole lot of nothing. And when it came down to it, when the rubber had to meet the road, as far as how our government works, most of them fucking just burn up and went, evaporated, vaporized, because
yeah, but we also see how this, I think I see how this thing plays out. We've seen how it plays out. I don't know if everybody's accepting of this, but you ultimately get to the point of frenzy where you've got everybody worked up. You've got them all fearful of a common enemy and a cause. You've got a lot of other crazy shit going on that you wish would just go away, and all of a sudden you find a reason to fight a war. And now all those people that were like, hey, yeah, Trump is kind of crazy, are like, well, it doesn't matter if he's crazy. We got to get these sons of bitches. America.
Man, I think that ship sailed. I think 9/11 and going into Iraq instead of doing what we should have done. Mm-hmm. I don't think they can pull that shit.
You don't think Trump could easily get us into a war?
I'm sorry, you broke up. I didn't hear you.
You don't think Trump could easily get us into a war?
Oh, he could get us into one, but he's not going to get the support for it like the Iraq invasion in 2003 because they waved the fucking never forget flag because of 9/11. He's not going to be. What I'm saying is he's not going to be able to spin some shit that has nothing to do with anything into overwhelming support for. He's not going to be able to spin. Like case in point, the Navy SEAL who died, who he had his wife, at his address of the nation get up and all this stuff. He's not going to spin that into, okay, now we're going to go invade another country that has nothing to do with that Navy SEAL dying, but we're going to connect the dots somehow. Don't worry, it'll make sense later. History will look favorably upon us. He's not going to pull a Bush, he's not going to pull a W part 2 because we fell for that shit one time. And to be honest with you, a whole lot of the country didn't fall for it the first time. It's just a lot of people were too scared to stand up and go, well, wait a minute, what the fuck does Iraq got to do with 9/11? Because they would get shouted down as un-American. What do you hate American? Never forget 9/11? Did you see the towers fall? Where were you when they fell? Here's a Toby Keith song about it. Hey, we're over that. We're past. When 9/11 happened, they said we entered the post-irony, period. We're post being shamed with you're not supporting the troops. you're not doing this. I think we've proven that for the most part, a lot of people in this country give lip service to the military and their support of it. Meanwhile, there's been, there was a war in Iraq and Afghanistan going on, and for the most part, our lives weren't touched by it because it wasn't on the nightly news like Vietnam was. And we didn't fight to have it on the nightly news. We don't want to see that shit. But at the same time, we're not going to throw our support behind him. He can start a war. And because wars are easy to start, it's getting out of it and sustaining the war that's going to be the hard part. And I just don't think he's going to have the type of support that he thinks he's going to have.
I don't know.
To do that.
Finding excuses to sustain a war doesn't ever seem to be a problem. Hey, real quick, Monique, we've been going on for a while here. Are you still good to hang in with us, or do you need to split?
Oh, no, I'm good.
Okay. Just wanted to give you an out there if you needed one.
No, I'm good. Thank you, though.
I did want to ask you a question, Monique, about how I'm assuming that since you're rather politically aware that you probably move in circles that are your friends are. Am I correct?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Okay, how would you say like people around your age are compared to you? Would you say that you're more politically engaged or about average or less than average?
I think a lot of people in my generation and a lot of people that I go to school with are actually even, like, some of them are even more into politics, but then, like, there are some people at my school who, like, don't care and they're not into it at all, but then there are a lot of people at my school, and there's, like, this one clique of people, and everybody knows exactly who they are, and they call everybody out for every single little thing, and if you think I'm annoying, you should meet them. And they're, like, every single little thing, they know everything, and you're stupid because you don't know every single thing.
Oh, give him our Skype address.
Yeah. We called them hipsters.
Yeah.
They preferred vinyl.
I don't remember ever talking about anything political in high school outside of the fact that
we didn't have Twitter.
I was about to say, I think social media has a lot to do with it, and having, like, cell phones, like, you have Google right at your fingertips, and everything that happens you can see right away, no matter where you're at.
Now, what would you say that there's a decent amount, a little amount, when it comes to support for Trump among people of your age? Like, what would you say is just pull figures out your ass like we do.
It's probably, honestly, 10% or lower. And that might just be because the people who are Trump supporters are afraid to come out and say that they support Trump because they will be attacked for that most of the time.
Now, don't you think that's a problem?
Like I do, but at the same time, it depends.
No, it shouldn't depend. If we're going for free speech and everyone gets a say and everyone's equal, they shouldn't have to fear to voice who they support. That's counteractive to, I guess, what the side that's attacking them is going for.
But Chris, hold on a second. And there's a difference between someone going, "Oh, you're a Trump supporter? Well, you're an idiot." If that's what you're afraid of, then you got to grow thicker skin because life's going to throw a whole lot meaner than that at you. And there's a difference between that and going, "Oh, you're a Trump supporter," and them getting jumped for it. And that's why they fear speaking out.
Well, I mean,
if it's because they don't want to hear something that goes that's going to hurt their feelings, then yeah, guess what? Get thicker skin. If it's because they're worried about getting the shit beat out of them, that's a problem.
Well, it's like the inauguration, or just in general the celebrity sphere. Can you tell me any celebrity that openly endorses Donald Trump? No, you can't, because these people want to work.
Scott Baio.
Oh yeah, fucking Chachi.
Chachi.
But I mean, we know, like, Vince Vaughn's a Republican. You ain't heard Vince Vaughn say shit about Donald Trump. Vince Vaughn likes working in the industry that he's in.
If you're, like, at school and you just say something about, like, supporting Donald Trump, then, like, you're not going to get attacked for it. But if you're like, I like Donald Trump because of, like, the Muslim ban and the fact that he hates Muslims because Muslims are, like, terrorists or something, then you're going to get attacked for saying that, obviously, because, like, it's just wrong in general.
Clarify, like, you would get jumped, like somebody would actually punch you, or you would just get lambasted on Twitter or Facebook or whatever.
It would, like, just turn into a giant argument. I don't think anybody would be physically in danger for that.
I didn't think so. I just wanted to clarify.
But like our school newspaper, for example, like there's been a whole bunch of stuff going on with that because there was an article written by a white guy, and he was like, I don't think we need Black History Month because white people and like Black history is taught every day in school, and like there's no reason, like why don't we have a White History Month then?
See, now, the word bravery is thrown out a lot. Now, I'm not saying this person is a hero, but that's the definition of fucking bravery, because that's definitely not going to be a popular opinion. You signed your real name. People will know where to find you.
Oh, yeah,
I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's right, but if you go by the definition of bravery, I'll give that person more props than a person who's in a room full of people who agree with him, spouting out stuff everybody agrees.
The woman who runs the newspaper, she's an English teacher, has been super accused of being homophobic and racist, and there's a lot behind that I'm not going to get into because I don't want it like to get in trouble or get anybody in trouble. But
yeah, I doubt in a school paper situation the teacher's going, well, I really disagree with this point of view and I think it's horrible hate speak, but I'm going to publish it anyway.
Right. And then there was another, so we have a club at our school called Allies, and they're a support group for people in the LGBTQ community. And there was an article in the paper written because people were tearing down posters and like destroying property of the group. And we had one kid who's actually my ex-boyfriend. This is really tragic. And he was pretty much just like, well, I think that it's not right that they're allowed to have their club and we aren't allowed to tear stuff down. Like, why can't we tear down their posters if we want?
Because they're not hurting anything. That's an easy answer. You're destructing property. They're not.
But then he got mad when people came for him about that and was like, well, that's just my opinion. And like, you're not allowed to tell me that. Like, you can't come attack me for saying that. And I'm like, dude, you put it in the school newspaper. Like, I know the person who wrote the article, she didn't want to put that, but the woman who runs it told her that she needed a counterclaim, so she had to find one. And she asked you if you wanted to put it in there anonymously. So he didn't even have to put his name, so he wouldn't have gotten attacked. But, like, what did you expect when you say something like that? And there's, like, the logic behind it. Like, I'm not in the club because I do way too much crap outside of school to add just another thing on, but they're not hurting anything by having a support group club. Like, nobody's shoving it down your throat. Nobody's forcing you to be there. So, no, you don't get to destroy anything. And it's kind of like, why would you want to if we're trying to be equal? That's like when people say that, you know, if women are equal, then I can hit women. Like, that's not the point, if that makes sense.
No, I follow you.
So, it's like, sure, like...
Oh, she hit me first?
Still.
I maintain this, okay? When it comes to that subject, this is what I say. It's an unfortunate rule of life when you're a kid and you're a male and you're in school. And this is regardless of color, sexual orientation. It could be worse based upon your color or sexual orientation. But as a male, growing up, when you're under the age of you hit someone, you go to jail, you know, instead you hit them and you get sent home from school or whatever. Fear of getting your ass kicked is what makes you bite your tongue and keeps you in line a lot of times. Now, whether that's right or wrong, that's a different discussion. It's just what is. That's how come you don't see nerds and little scrawny guys going up and mouthing off to some 6'9" lineman from the football team. Because if he pisses that guy off, that guy's going to slap the shit out of him.
They hone their skills and become stand-up comedians.
Actually, I did, and they didn't. So
yeah, I don't see a whole lot of that, to be completely honest with you. Our school, I don't know if our school is just weird or that's just how things are now compared to when you guys were in high school, but it's really different. Like, people aren't, then like what you see on TV is like my perception of what high school was like 20 years ago, because I can't tell you because I didn't live through it.
You mean your fellow students don't actually say "catch me outside"?
Not seriously, no. No,
how
but
about
like,
that?
There's so much more violence and arguing and like bullying, I think, on TV than actually goes on in high school.
Well, then, what I was going to say is, as you get older, where instead of at school where that happens, it usually happens, one, at bars, and two, between drunk people. And if any group of guys who, not any, but most group of guys who have like 5 or 6 guys and they go out, they've had that one friend who's always barking at people and trying to get shit started between, his crew and some other group of guys. And he's usually the guy that's going to get his ass kicked first. And so what you learn is that as a male is let him bark and let him get his ass kicked a few times, and he'll learn that, well, there's a time and a place for you to pop off. And at a bar with drunk people who aren't thinking rationally and are on mind-altering chemicals isn't the time to go ahead and start popping off about shit.
Hey, man, you get one, all right? I defend you one time blindly, all right? After that, you get your ass kicked and arrested.
Yeah.
And then we can determine whether or not we want to be friends in public from here on out.
Oh, yeah. I've gone out with guys who seem completely normal, and then we go to the bar and they drink, and they turn into the Tasmanian devil. They want to take on everybody. And those type of guys you can't have fun with. I don't go out to get into fights. Okay, and when I was younger, there was a group of friends, and that's what we did. We went around looking for trouble, and guess what? We found it. Shocking, I know. But as I got older, and the cops started showing up talking about everybody's going to jail, I was like, I don't have a doing time type disposition. This is not fun anymore. I'm going to find people who want to go to the bar, have fun, and make an ass of themselves singing karaoke. How about that?
Yeah,
that's a little bit more fun.
When I had a group of friends where the constant feeling was, man, I hope the cops don't come. Like it was time to change that group of friends. But man, are the cops going to be here? That's the number one worry every time you hang out with these people. Time to hang out with some new people.
I mean, the thing is that what I'm getting at with this whole thing, when people say, well, if women are equal to men, then women can get hit. What I'm getting at, and this is gender, this has nothing to do with gender. This is just, in my experience, what I've seen. If you are a violent person, and violence is one of the top 2 or 3 ways you solve a situation, you're going to attract violence to you. And if you're a violent woman and you get violent with women and men, eventually you're going to meet the guy, just like every guy who's like that who's going to knock your teeth down your throat. And at that point, I have no empathy for the person that stands up and starts crying about, I'm a woman, how dare he hit me? Just like I have no empathy for the guy who's been walking around picking fights all his life, who finally met the guy who broke his fucking jaw with one punch. Shouldn't have been a dick.
No, I completely agree with that.
Rich wants, don't be a dick to apply to everybody.
What guys are immediately excited about is like, yes, I finally get to hit women. Like, that's not what it should be about.
I see your point. It's not a license to be like, all right, I can finally start beating my wife. No, that's not what we're saying.
On top of that, those guys put those guys into a fucking boxing ring and see how excited they are to fight another guy.
Well, no, those are the people that say when it's okay to burn the flag, that think, all right, I can start going out and burning the flag every day. No, just say you're allowed to if you would like to express yourself. It doesn't mean you just...
I was watching a movie from a couple years ago. I can't remember the title of it, but it was with Chiwetel Ejiofor and Julia Roberts and Nicole Kidman. And Chiwetel and Julia Roberts were both they were like recruited anti-terrorism officers. They're basically like partners, though. And he said she's giving him the business about liking Nicole Kidman, and he's like, why do you got to be such a dick? And she's like, thank you, I appreciate that. He's like, really? She's like, yeah, a lot of guys would have said something sexist, like calling me a cunt, and he's like, why, when you're such a dick?
Don't be a dick.
That's me boiling down your point, I think.
That's the name of this show. Don't be a dick.
Well, I mean, look, there's certain things. An asshole is an asshole. It's regardless of gender.
Yeah.
If you're a dick or if you're acting like a bitch and you're being all cunty about something, that's regardless of gender in my mind. That means you're being a whiny bitch about shit.
Yeah.
There's a difference between complaining with a point and complaining just to complain. I've worked jobs I've hated, despised. Like, literally, I go home at night and have to drink a 12-pack of beer to keep from going in and killing everyone the next day. I hate the job, and I go in and I bitch about everything. You know what I was being? I was being a whiny little bitch. And what I should have done, but I was too young and dumb to realize it at the time, was instead of spending all my energy bitching about that, I should have been looking for another fucking job.
Right. If you're concentrating on what's next, then you're not going into your job thinking, oh my God, this again. You're just thinking this is only temporary.
Planning only gets you so far. It needs to be plan of action at some point.
Yeah, I hear you.
So well, I gotta.
Yes. Where do we go from here?
Well, there's been a couple studies that came up that I thought were interesting.
Okay. I'm game.
Did you guys hear about the study that came out in support of vaping? It's the first long-term study.
There's a UK study that showed an 80 to 90% decrease in harmful anything.
Yeah,
basically.
And it magically came out just as Big Tobacco has won their fight against the smaller vaping industry, and
really?
now Big Tobacco is wanting to, at least in.
I didn't read that spin on it.
Here in the UK and in the US, they're starting to push more and more vaping, but they're calling it something else. I can't remember what tobacco free something or another. It's some little term they come up with.
Okay. Kind of a blanket term that they can use for all kinds of different vaping accessories and whatnot.
Yeah, basically by saying tobacco free, they're implying that you're not getting tobacco with all the chemicals it takes to grow and process and et cetera, which is a valid point. But I find it amazing that when they were fighting the smaller vaping industry, you could have gun to their head, they'd have never admitted any of this. Now they're coming out and saying this shit.
Nah, I gotcha.
And I'm just like, boy, that's awfully convenient. The study comes out 3 months after all the the FDA regulations that the Big Tobacco lobbied for.
This is actually relevant. Did you see Logan?
No, not yet.
Okay. This isn't giving anything away. And there's some cool shit that could be spoiled in that movie. I'll just let that be known. But there's two characters that vape in it. One is the main villain, and the other one is a car salesperson who might as well be a villain. They're never portrayed well in any movie.
Well, isn't that basically what goes back to a couple months ago? We were talking about how if you want to set someone up as edgy or the bad guy or even the anti-hero of a story, you automatically stick a cigarette in their mouth or her mouth.
Well,
I mean, that's
that was an evolution.
It makes sense. They're shifting a little bit.
Yeah, but that was an evolution from. I mean, you go back to if you want to just have a hard, serious character, whether he's a good guy or a bad guy, put a cigarette in his mouth, and go back even further to if we're going to have somebody on screen, they should be smoking. Why aren't they smoking?
I know. If you ever want a good laugh, go back and look at some of the old, from the 50s and especially the McCarthy era, the Senate hearings, and you just look at the haze of cigarette smoke hanging over all of the Senate.
Right, they've got full ashtrays and they're being served steaks during it.
Smoke. Doctors going, oh yeah, I want to keep the doctor away. Pack of Chesterfields a day.
So here's
all the good smoke.
Here's another good Ask a Millennial question. Monique, how many of your peers are vaping?
To be honest, not a whole lot of them. There's one kid who used to bring his little vape pen to lunch like my freshman year. I'm a senior now, so this was. I feel like it's gotten a lot more popular since then. But he would bring it to school and he would stealth vape. But there's
I was doing that in the movie theater today.
No, nicotine or pot, I guess is.
Oh, well, we're talking nicotine.
Yeah, I don't hang out with a lot of kids like that. I hang out with a lot of the band nerds, as dumb as that sounds.
I hear you.
So.
But the band nerds I ran with were smoking and drinking, and
some of them are pretty crazy too.
Dude, we rule at my
high
school.
Heard about band camp.
I mean, yeah, there's some of them are pretty wild.
I'm a former band geek. I'm just saying, there were cigarettes, there was pot, there was alcohol. Just had to know who to hang with.
Yeah, I guess. Like I said, I don't really know a whole lot of people who vape that are my age. I know people who are a couple years older. It's really popular.
Do you think they started smoking cigarettes in early? I don't know.
I guess that's the question. Are cigarettes still around with your age group?
Yeah. And then they've moved on to vape, maybe, or
really a whole lot.
Yeah.
I think I only know of 3 people that I go to school with that smoke cigarettes.
But I mean, no matter the generation, there's certain tropes that still stick around. I guarantee
I knew 3 people in each class who smoked cigarettes.
Well, but then
there's
again,
still some
I don't
dude
talk
with
to a whole lot of people.
There's still something to do with long curly hair and a flannel shirt and a Megadeth T-shirt that smokes cigarettes behind the school.
Mm-hmm.
Every school still has to have a burnout.
And him and the kid in the Smiths T-shirt still bullshit every time they smoke.
Yeah. What's that? What'd you say, Rich?
Why are you talking about Jay when he's not here? Long curly hair, Megadeth shirt, and a flannel, smoking a cigarette in high school.
And I told Aaron, and then him and the kid in the Smiths T-shirt always, bullshit
smoking cloves
while they're having a cigarette.
Right? Yeah.
Oh man. Well, yeah, it's just it's funny because it sounds to me, I hate to interpret it this way, but it sounds to me like the fact that when we were kids, our mom would write us a letter and say, please, I need cigarettes. Please sell my son
to be
2
fair,
packs of
we're
whatever.
not that old. That was gone by the time we were teenage. That was around when we were little kids.
But even when I was like 16, 17, I could still go in and buy a pack of cigarettes if I knew where to go.
Oh, for sure.
Sounds like they're enforcing laws a lot better.
Oh yeah.
Than they used to, and as a consequence, it's harder to get. So, surprise, surprise, less kids are smoking.
Buying cigarettes before I could drive a car.
Exactly.
For me, they weren't for anyone.
Yeah. I mean, I was a late bloomer and everything. It took dating a smoker to get me to be a smoker.
Hey,
I was like, either make out with
folks, right?
Either make out with the ashtray or give in.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I hate to say this because I still do smoke cigarettes and I also vape at the same time. Not at the same time, literally, but
man, that's commitment.
Yeah. I've cut down. I'm only down to 2 lighters a day now.
I was saying, why don't you just open up the vape juice and pour it directly into your mouth? There we go.
Another couple weeks.
First milliliter.
Another couple weeks, I can take 3 or 4 of these patches off too. While he's chewing gum.
If people go, of all the shit you've done when you were younger, what do you regret the most? And I don't regret a lot of my drug use because I had fun and I didn't, drug use was never a problem. Drinking I regret, but that's because my body doesn't react to alcohol like most normal people. Mm-hmm. And, so that's a separate issue. But as far as just like other like smoking, it is the dumbest habit I ever picked up. It doesn't expand your mind, doesn't get you high, doesn't make you feel good. In fact, it does the opposite of it. You're a pariah. It's like you're a leper, a modern day leper.
It's just a monkey that you're feeding for no reason.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I started smoking, in like early 20s, I guess. And then early 30s when I got married and settled down a little bit. And especially when my wife at the time got pregnant, quit. And didn't really look back on it. Like, I didn't miss cigarettes at all for that time. It wasn't until the divorce that I started smoking again. And I haven't been able to kick the actual nicotine habit since. But I do feel like if I didn't vape, I'd be doing something retarded. I mean...
Crack, meth...
I would, I'd be the guy shuffling a deck of cards all the time, or I'd need one of those fidget toys. Or something.
You'd have like a sucker in your mouth,
So why not?
Who was that detective on TV that did that?
There's something about nicotine. My sister, both times she's pregnant with her sons, quit both times, and could not wait to light up. And I'm like, you just for 9 months, you just quit. Why start now? She's like, because let's go. Like, because I don't want to. Yeah,
them hooks are set deep, man. I'm telling you, I know people who've kicked heroin who said I would rather go back and kick heroin and try to give up smoking again.
They let you bring cigarettes to rehab.
But I think one of the the untalked about, the not so much talked about thing with pregnant women is the fact that when they give birth, that is actually, part of them is getting themselves back. They're like, I'm just one person again. I have some of my individuality back. I'm not just a pregnant woman. And so, yeah, I can understand wanting to maybe claim back some of those vices that made you feel a little bit more independent, not just a mom.
Listen, you meat
and
parasite.
That be your identity.
It's mama's time now.
Yeah. Now, for my ex, it wasn't the smoking; it was the weed. Couldn't wait to, but when it comes to shit like that too, it's not just about can't wait to give birth. You have to stop breastfeeding.
Are you kidding? She stopped smoking weed when she was pregnant?
Yeah.
There's whole swatches of the city called Redford that proves that you'll be fine if you smoke while pregnant.
Well, and if you ever notice too, everything it says,
I think I'm an example actually too.
It doesn't say that smoking marijuana will harm your child.
No,
it always says you shouldn't smoke marijuana while you're pregnant.
Right.
It doesn't say why. Like it'll tell you like smoking when you're pregnant will cause this. Drinking when you're pregnant will cause this.
Here's
when
why.
it comes to pot, it just say, hey, you shouldn't smoke pot when you're pregnant.
But it's just as much it's just as much a reason why as anything else. And that is we see no benefits. That's it.
Your baby will just come out with a penchant for reggae music and tacos.
I was going to say, that kid's going to come out woke as fuck.
Yeah.
He's going to be like, he's going to get smacked on the ass. First thing he's going to say is, where's the Occupy movement?
Yeah.
And my iPad.
Hey, man, I just came out. I was chilling there for 9 months. I'm looking for directions to the protest.
Where the Xbox at?
Yeah. I was told I got an iPhone upon arriving.
Oh, hold on to that. It's your health care for a whole year.
Yeah. We'll get into that another.
Yeah, okay, so I don't know, do we want to talk about anything more explicitly topical that happened this week? Or I think we covered a lot of ground here.
You got anything to throw in there, Monique?
I'm good.
I really appreciate you being on with us. I've had a really great, fantastic, I don't know why I need two adjectives there. But
three middle-aged guys try to figure out how young people think.
I've had a great time talking with you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I knew complaining on the internet would get me somewhere in life.
There you go. Thanks for having for being a good sport about it, being open-minded. Just listen to some of our back-ass work questions that you in your mind. But I hope you didn't feel too on display like a zoo animal. Like, hey, look, we got us a real millennial. Hope we didn't do that too much to you.
Yeah.
No.
Really, the sad part of it is that a lot of the conversations Monique and me and her parents or just various people have had before tonight, we really should have had mics on those conversations.
Yeah.
Because this one, it's kind of stilted because it's like everybody's still, feeling each other out and shit. Like it's when we don't think anyone's listening that the shit really starts flying.
Still, too, I think the three of us, after 3 years of doing this together, while we still have our filter, so to speak, we still, I think, approach things as three rational thinking people. We're not part of the looking to be offended generation or group, I should say. Like we go into things trying to all right, let's talk this out. Let's see, let's find out where the disconnect is. Let's see if we can meet in the middle. Right. We're not ready to throw up our outrage flags at the drop of a hat.
Well, hopefully, Monique, you can check back in with us sometime soon in the future.
Yeah, for sure.
Our youth correspondent.
Yeah. I feel like we've done something here.
Yeah.
Some outreach.
Yes.
Something happened with people under the age of 25. We go live to Monique.
Yeah. Our bridge from Gen X to the millennials.
Yeah, hey, now you feel that pressure on you, that you're a voice of a generation. Kurt Cobain couldn't handle it. You going to be all right?
Oh, come on.
I know there's no shotguns in your house, but are you going to be all right?
Damn, man, Rich.
I'll probably be fine.
Rich can't get out without going dark first.
That's why we love him. Thanks, everybody. Oh, wait. Hold on.
Yes.
Last week I skipped my organizational push. I was just going to push vote.org again. You just go there. You fill out your pertinence, and it'll tell you where to go vote, if you're registered to vote, where to register, all that stuff.
Right, because if these same crazy people are controlling shit in 2 years, less than 2 years.
Hey, next year,
we can
it's the midterms.
Doing something about
2018, that is next year, all right? Q1's already over for everyone keeping track at home.
We might actually have a little bit of a new audience just for this episode because of Monique. So if any of her peers are listening and are getting to be voting age or have just turned voting age, I know it's cliche, but you have to vote.
Rock
you
the vote,
really
man.
do.
Please vote.
You don't think it matters because we were your age once, and we didn't think it mattered at your age, but it matters.
I think if you're interested in politics, it's identifying where are the politicians that are speaking for you right now. I think that's the biggest question. Like, you have to identify these people first before you can start rallying support for them. But
don't let people 20 to 30 years older than you make decisions for you of who should be in charge of you, because that's what happens.
You're gonna push this. Don't believe old Whitey.
Yeah.
Don't trust anyone over 30.
Yeah.
Well, no, for us, wouldn't it be true? Don't trust anyone over 50.
I still identify as under 30.
Hey,
you can't tell me.
Oh, that's right.
Okay,
you
Rachel,
can't tell me that
I identify as a younger. Yeah, but do that, and then I know they're a butt of a lot of things, but if you look at the work that they've done, they actually do a lot of good things.
They do.
ACLU.org. Go onto their website, see how to get involved with them. They actually do that whole Civil Rights Act of 1964. Yeah, they were kind of involved with that thing. They do some good work. I know they're a butt of a lot of jokes, a lot of things we bitch about, but just check them out. And yeah, and then a message I heard upstairs before I came down here. I thought this was a good idea. Maybe you didn't skip work the other day for the day without a woman,
right?
Or a woman. What I heard, and I don't know why more of this wasn't touted instead of, taking a day off of work. Hey, take the money you earned on Wednesday and donate it to something like Planned Parenthood, National Organization of Women, things like that. Said we sit around and complain all the time. Just at the end, maybe start suggesting courses of action, things we can do that actually were.
I'm with you, brother.
Getting involved. Then I feel it validates us sitting around and complaining for 2 hours. But Adam Regimented Pod on Twitter, Adam Regimented on Instagram, unregimented at ChristopherMedia.net if you'd like to email the show. Somebody likes us. Something happened in this last week. We had probably our biggest download day ever as far as unregimented goes.
Well, thank you for listening.
So
we appreciate you seeking us out and downloading our podcast.
Yes. And if you like it, tell a friend. Thank you, Monique, for joining us. Being a good sport.
You're welcome.
Keep an open mind. And we'll catch everybody next week.
See ya.
If you like this show, please tell a friend. Please follow us on Twitter and like and share us on Facebook by searching for Christopher Media. You can subscribe to all ChristopherMedia.net shows for free on ChristopherMedia.net. Please make sure to rate and comment on all your favorite Christopher Media shows. Thank you in advance for supporting Christopher Media by clicking on the PayPal button and by clicking through to all the sponsors who support ChristopherMedia.net. Thank you for visiting ChristopherMedia.net, and thank you for listening. Thank you for visiting ChristopherMedia.net.
You heard that safe drivers get rewarded with Snapshot from Progressive, so you went online to check it out. But then you saw an ad for a vintage baseball cap, and now you find yourself checking the stats of that team's second baseman in '97, wondering why his stolen base total dropped after his rookie season. Wonder how much his rookie card is worth. Yes, they said it was easy to save money with Snapshot from Progressive, but they forgot about the rest of the internet. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Snapshot not available in California, North Carolina, or from all agents.
Electrical pros, the Home Depot can help you put safety first with a 4-pack of Kidde FireX hardwire smoke detectors for just $39.97. Order these interconnected smoke alarms online and you put safety first. And that's followed by $10 savings on each pack, free delivery, and peace of mind knowing you got the right brand for fire safety. See? Put safety first and everything else follows when you order a 4-pack of Kidde smoke detectors for just $39.97. Only at the Home Depot. How doers get more done. U.S. only.